the wild woman energy comes most for those who seem to grow up with mothers and fathers who look at them and don't understand how this person got here, who this person is, and how to raise them. For the wild woman archetype, there's usually tremendous suffering involved in the human life, in the human woman who stands in front of this particular archetype. Often from the time they are babies, they are taken captive, domesticated, told that they're not right, they're wrong-headed and improper. It could be that because most baby children, until very recently, were born in drugged births, they were schedule-fed, toilet-trained too early. They were handled like animal offspring whose mothers had died or who had deserted. They're trained to remain contained, to never really spread their wings, and especially never to find those who were like themselves. That was considered very, very dangerous. The domestication of the wild continued. So young females are taught to not like spit and moistness, sweat, and other effluvia. And out of the many possibilities of what it means to be female, only two aspects were given weight. It is the sweet mother who always takes care and shows concern for everything and everybody, and the know-nothing maiden who is always sweet, cute, and innocent. Which leaves out the whole instinctual and animal nature of a woman. Yet by the time most women who were raised as captive creatures, by the time they were teenagers, they were exposed to art cinema. They were exposed to Latin poets. They were exposed to things and ideas, and often lovers even, who asked them to please be a full person. So the veils that were laid down to keep the girls separate from their animal nature, well, sometimes they were torn and certainly wavered. And although many girls were raised in an Orthodox religion such as Roman Catholicism or Judaism or Fundamentalist Baptist, by the time they were teenagers, particularly in the 60s and 70s, their religious faith was damaged. The hold of the religious symbols on young women of that time was slipping away because the sensuality of those women, which is not only sexual but also creative, was calling to them more and more strongly all the time. And the thou shalt nots of their religion were as much a part of the cage that they had experienced as their familial injunctions were. So many, many women during that time, not just in America, but in Europe as well, threw over the old order, said, no, I won't be caged anymore. I want to be free. And they went out for the first time in their family line into the world. We're all infected with a yearning for a wild freedom. But we all feel a certain shame in it. I think Jung said that one of the problems about the process of individuation was that in order to retrieve the gifts buried in the deep unconscious, one had to also deal with the instinctual aspects of appetite, creative life, sensuality, sexuality, love of God, that is almost mind-possessing. And I said that this is the most difficult course to take, because there is, I think, in all women, a wild and an ancient gypsy that cries in anguish when we starch her flat. There is a part of us that can never, ever be happy until the gypsy can dance. There's a saying that after the world was created and God rested, on the 8th day, dancing was created, and that the world has been divided ever since. There's great truth in this. Something terribly mysterious, terribly dangerous, and terribly frightening about the aspect of the wild. Wild meaning natural. Wild meaning being connected to one's instincts, being connected to one's deepest soul. And for girl children particularly, as has been the custom for generation upon generation, the idea is to domesticate her away from her wildness so that she will be submissive, so that she will not cause trouble, so that she will not, God forbid, become pregnant, so that she will not bring shame upon the family for having lust. Except the thing that we've overlooked for so long is that lust is actually sublimated most of the time, particularly if your elders help you to sublimate that into something creative, so that a young girl or a young boy, for that matter, feels lust is a natural thing. Jung perhaps looked on it as something like prima materia, which means a basic, fundamental set of, say, building blocks that you can do anything with. Yes, certainly you can go have sex, but you can also do other things with it. The word sublimation is really a sort of an unfortunate concept, because it sounds like you take a drive, a sexual drive, say, for instance, a lust for life, and that you turn it into something less, that you turn it into taking a cold shower, or you turn it into taking a walk, or you turn it into sitting down and writing some poetry, and that somehow that's less. No, I don't think that the aspect of the wild should be sublimated, but rather channeled. People who have an unfortunate predilection or addiction, that is, when they feel aroused, they feel only sexual. They do not also feel inventive, creative. And I always feel when I see people like that, that they've not been parented, that they've not been taught that that is like a river of water that flows always. No matter how young, no matter how old you are, it flows always, and that you can use it for sexuality, sexual activity, but you can also use it for many, many, many other things. Use it to grow flowers with. You can use it to make a desert into a green land. You can use it to cook with. You can use it for many, many, many things. And the woman who's in touch with her immediate wild instincts knows that for a fact. There's a great problem in the 60s and 70s as well, with women who suddenly were released from their cages and didn't know what to do with themselves. What was before them was all the booze they wanted, all the drugs they wanted, all the lovers that they wanted. Everything that they had been starving for all those years was suddenly before them. And unfortunately and tragically, many, many women, accidentally or on purpose, gave their lives over those excesses. You see, in the world of nature, there are no ravening animals. The animal that is often compared to the feminine force Well, there are two, really. One is the bear, and the other is the wolf. And both have a very bad reputation, in part because I think some of Grimm's fairy tales, which have been reshaped by the Grimm brothers before they were printed, give a rather one-sided look at these creatures. But the bear and the wolf are actually incredibly social creatures who work by rules. And the whole clan, or the whole pack, agrees on these particular rules. So that wolves, healthy wolves, will only kill what they have to kill to eat, to survive. And the only time that they'll do what's called surplus killing is when they have been through a famine, which would normally occur during the winter months. And during those times, it's as though something inside them says, I need to eat and I need to survive, and I do this normally by taking down animals that are some of the times smaller than I, some of the times bigger than I. And once springtime comes and the snows melt and they have access to game, they'll kill everything in sight and go on a killing frenzy. And they won't eat the meat and they won't cache the meat. They will leave it. This is very similar to what can happen to a woman who has been a captured woman, an over-domesticated woman, who suddenly is free to do and be and act whichever she wants. She goes on a rampage. So if she wasn't permitted to paint, she'd stay up day and night to paint, maybe for weeks and weeks and weeks, impairing her health and God knows what else. If she was supposed to be a lady and sit with her knees together and never swear and never drink alcohol, and suddenly she can't have enough of alcohol and she sits with her legs apart and swears like a trooper. This might be a period that any woman has to go through once she has been released from her captivity. However, there are boundaries that need to be put into place so the woman doesn't harm herself or anyone else. And those boundaries are the ones generally of common sense, like not drinking and driving at the same time, and being very careful about transmittable diseases, being very careful about who you choose to be friends with, being careful about your health and your life and your love. Otherwise, you have just the opposite of what you had before, but it's just as destructive. In other words, you're captured before and you were caged and you weren't allowed to do anything. And now you're painting your life with very broad brush strokes, and the paint you're using is incredibly destructive. So, if you are on the verge of breaking out of some of the injunctions that you have carried like a heavy, heavy weight all your life, with regards to how you are supposed to act, and often that means acting exactly like your family value system. If you are on the verge of breaking away, taking a risk, daring not to act in the prescribed manner, in the manner that's approved of by all the people around you, then first, make some guidelines and some boundaries for yourself, and let them be as caring and as healthy as you would lay them down for someone younger than you that you loved. This is what the connection with the wild is. It is something that outlives age. It's something that cannot be altered by time. In fact, it grows more rich as a woman becomes older.